Delighted to be joined now by Toni Russo. She's an obesity nurse consultant to talk about the latest prediction about obesity trends in this country and indeed the world. Latest prediction in a report that's published in the Lancet medical journal says that 3 in 4 Britons will be either overweight or obese by 2050, and indeed 50% of the world will be overweight or obese by that time as well. Very good morning to you, Toni. What's your reaction to that report?
Well, I'm shocked at the level, but in another way I'm not shocked because the statistics have been going up every year. So we knew that we were heading in that direction. I mean, I think there's several things to think about. First of all, if we're just using BMI to determine obesity, then we know that's really flawed, because particularly between a BMI of 25 and 30, which is this sort of overweight category, a load of people in that category look very fit and well. They don't have any health problems. So that skews the stats. I also think that, you know, we're in a far more mechanized society where we don't really have to get up to do anything. You know, you don't have to change the TV channel, you have sensors for everything. So in the old days, you kind of would have burnt off what you ate without even thinking about it. You didn't have to do formal exercise. So that you have to consider. And I think that, you know, poverty is a big part of it, because I think that highly processed foods are generally the cheaper ones. And even if
they taste better.
They do taste better.
They're quick and they're easy.
And if you go to a food bank, you're not really going to get very healthy food. I mean, they do incredible work, but to get vegetables is not that common.
Well, no, you get, you know, they get tin veg. People get to pick what they want, and people don't pick that stuff. They pick the stuff that fills them up. I'm always fascinated. People say this is related to poverty when you know, in every other age, being poor meant you were skinny. I mean, you look at people who are genuinely really poor, they're not overweight. And whenever we have these images of, you know, a single mum at a food bank for them, the BBC or ITV, it's always a woman who's got arms that are bigger than my thighs going, oh, I've had to skip a meal. And I'm thinking, well, probably not done you any bad thing to skip the odd meal, my love. I mean, I just find this so difficult to believe. I know when I've been poor, when I've literally, you know, had to walk everywhere, can't make the rent, absolutely really down on my luck, and I was skinny as a rate because I couldn't afford things like takeaways.
I mean, I'm surprised to hear that, because I think that, you know, when I've been at my poorest, you tend to go for stuff like rice and bread and stuff, and you know, carbohydrates generally are much cheaper, so that is difficult. I think there are some good changes going on which need to be highlighted. I mean, I've done some work in schools recently, and particularly in the borough of Lambeth, and the school meals that they're offering are really very good. You know, they're incredibly well balanced, lots of fruit and vegetables.
It's not all chips and pizza.
It's not all chips and pizza, and they actually have the children sitting around tables where they share and they cut up condiments and things, and they get a whole idea of a balanced meal. And I think that's really important. And many of the schools now are doing the Daily Mile, which I think you heard about, came from a lady in Scotland, where they get the kids to run around the playground for a mile.
Well, I mean, that's it. I mean, we all used to do that. I mean, I think I wasn't a remotely sporty child, I mean, at all. But I mean, I cycled to school, I swam after school. You know, you did. I mean, I hated PE, but you did it anyway. I find it extraordinary that you know, how inactive lots of kids are. But the thing is, this study, I mean, 3 in 4 Brits will be overweight or obese by 2050. Now, back in 2011, Chris Snowdon at the Institute of Economic Affairs has pointed out this morning, a Lancet report also predicted UK obesity rate would be rise from 26% to 46% by 2030. So 2011 to 2030. By 2023, just 2 years ago, it was still at 26%. Most of the predictions that we've had over the years about rising obesity and rising people being overweight, and as you pointed out, some big question marks about some of the stats on overweight. Obese, we know when someone's obese. Overweight is a bit more of a grey area. Those stats aren't getting any worse, and most of the sort of wild predictions about how terrible it will be don't ever come true.
I don't know. I mean, I think if you look at things like the weight loss drugs that are available, the vast majority of people that are applying for those drugs have a BMI or body mass index between about 27 and 32, 33. So they're not in a particularly high risk group. I mean, you could argue and say, well, they're tapping it before it becomes a problem, and that's valid. But I think that
they could give up a cappuccino a day and they'd lose the same amount of weight.
Maybe. I think typically, if you look at women that are struggling with their weight, typically they don't have breakfast because they're trying to get the kids ready for school or they haven't got time. They maybe have a snack mid-morning, get a cup of soup or something really ridiculous at lunchtime because they think they're being really healthy, having nothing. And then by the time they get home in the evening,
Be
they're
a bar of dairy milk.
anything, you know. And you have like this 3 hour window where you're so ravenous. And particularly if you're on the road in a car, you stop at the services to get fueled.
Yeah.
And so you
Get your sausage roll. Yeah, look, I've done that. I was a news reporter. We were out and about all the time. You're getting up really early. You eat whatever's available. Put weight on. So eat healthy meals at regular times and all of that. That's what works. But the thing is, again, it's always talked about as something that's completely outside our control, as if supermarkets in poor areas don't have any vegetables at all. No frozen peas. No tins of carrots or anything like that, or even the fresh veg in it. It's just such an absolute lie. The main reason people are eating a lot of this food is it tastes good, it's easy, it's quick, and we can't be bothered to cook a proper meal. That's the reality.
Well, I mean, I think can't be bothered, maybe it's not fair. I mean, that may be the case with some people, but I think that, if you go to the main supermarkets, you can get veg very cheaply, and particularly, coming up to Christmas when you can get things for 60p, it is very cheap. But a lot of people, if you've got a couple of kids and even a highbrows, you're going to go to the local corner shop where the profit margins are a bit...
Well, they have no supermarkets, do they?
No,
They've
they
got no
do.
Tesco Express or...
Yeah, but you're getting the very cheap fruit and veg there, and also
so they can't be bothered to walk like a couple of blocks to a cheaper supermarket rather than the 24-hour shop, which for obvious reasons sells things more expensive. People are making bad choices.
People aren't making,
but they're still making choices.
It's not always their fault, and I mean, years ago.
I'm not talking about fault. I'm just talking people make choices. If it was up to me, I would eat nothing but fast food. I love all fast food, genuinely. I make a choice every day not to do that.
Well, people make choices that are based on all manner of things. But I think that, I was community midwife years ago, and I'd go into houses where people had, if they were lucky, they had a kettle, no microwave, no cooker, nothing. So, buying fruit and vegetables was pointless for them.
What fruit? I mean, again, buying fruit and vegetables, of course it wasn't.
Well, fruit's a bit easier now because most of the main supermarkets now have a little basket and the kids can grab a piece of fruit for free as they're going around the shop rather than eat a bag of sweets. It's whether or not they're going to do it or not, it remains to be seen.
You can afford to buy sweets. Genuinely, if you can afford to buy sweets or fizzy drinks or crisps, you're not poor. Simple as that.
A lot of it we get from... I mean, if you're not
spare cash. We didn't have that stuff when I was little. We didn't have money. We could never afford that. I remember the ice cream van coming down the street. We lived in Birmingham, and I remember my mate next door would always give me the bottom of her ice cream cone dipped in because there was no way we could have afforded ice cream.
Well, desserts were a treat when I was a child.
Exactly.
Maybe on a Sunday. You certainly didn't have them every day, but nobody did. So you weren't getting bombarded with adverts. It's like designer clothes, isn't it?
Yeah.
You never saw these things advertised. They weren't for people like us. You lived within your little group. And I think that now people get bombarded with advertising. It's all very sexy, and they kind of think, why can't I have that too?
Well, because you can't afford it.
Well, it's true. And another thing is, I'm not saying that I don't want to humiliate people, far from it. But when I was at school, if you went up to about a size 14 as a girl, you were going to struggle to get school uniforms to fit. Whereas now, school uniforms go up to really, really big sizes.
Oh, yeah, we should stop doing that.
Well, I don't know if that's fair.
Oh, I think we should. No, I think we should. I think we should prosecute the parents. I'm full on. I'm on this. I genuinely. I think if you've got an obese child, I think you should be prosecuted for child negligence and cruelty. I'm not even joking.
Well, they might have Prader-Willi syndrome. It may be.
They might. I mean, again, they might. They might. Or you're doing a really bad job of parenting your kid and people need to call you up on it. I mean, I'm just throwing that out there. Toni Russo, I wish we had more time. She's an obesity nurse consultant. I thank you very much, Dean.